alone for the weekend, Anna, a high school junior, decided to make the most of it with a horror movie marathon. With popcorn at her side and the surround sound on high, she settled into the soft couch, immersing herself in the suspense-filled world of her favorite thrillers. Several hours and movies in, just as the tension was at its peak in her current film, the power cut out abruptly. Anna sat in sudden darkness, her heart pounding from the suspense of the film, and now, the startling blackout. She took a deep breath to calm her nerves, then reached for her phone, using its flashlight to navigate her way to the basement where the fuse box was located. As she moved through the house, its familiar features were turned sinister in the sparse light. Shadows stretched and distorted, making the benign seem threatening. Anna swallowed her rising fear, reminding herself she was alone, and there was nothing to worry about. Upon reaching the basement door, she glimpsed her reflection in the window beside it. The sight of herself provided a comforting reality check, allowing her a small laugh at her jittery state. However, as she turned to open the door, she noticed, from the corner of her eye, that her reflection didn't mimic her. Shaken, she turned back to the window. Her reflection was still facing her, its lips curled into an eerie smile that she didn't remember giving. The sight sent chills down her spine, and she rubbed her eyes in disbelief. When she opened them, her reflection was normal again. With a sigh of relief, she turned back to the basement door, attributing the strange occurrence to her overactive imagination fueled by horror movies. She descended the steps, fixed the fuse, and breathed a sigh of relief as the lights flickered back on. However, the relief was short-lived. As she ascended the stairs, she saw, in the glass of a framed picture, her reflection still standing at the bottom of the staircase, smiling. Panic surged through her. Every mirror, every reflective surface she passed showed the same haunting image: Hedda Pellinger, unmoving, always smiling. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a nightmare. Her phone started to buzz with incoming calls, but her reflection stayed frozen on the screen, grinning at her. Fear gripped her heart as she realized her calls for help were impossible. Terror fueled her actions as she decided to confront this supernatural anomaly. She stood in front of a large mirror in the living room, staring at her smiling reflection. Taking a deep breath, she demanded in a shaky voice, "What do you want?" The room turned ice cold. The reflection's smile grew wider, and then it spoke in a voice that wasn't hers, "Your fear." The realization struck her like a lightning bolt. The entity, whatever it was, fed on her fear. She had to regain control of her emotions. Taking slow, deep breaths, she worked to calm her racing heart. She faced her reflection again. This time, she commanded, "Leave. You're not welcome here." Her voice wavered, but there was an undercurrent of determination. The reflected grin lessened slightly, its gaze wavering. Hour after hour, Anna stood her ground, challenging her reflection, demanding it to leave. She forced herself to laugh, to make jokes, anything to contradict the fear it wanted from her. With each passing moment, her fear lessened, and the reflection's smile shrank. As the sun began to rise, the reflection mimicked her movements once again. Exhausted but triumphant, Anna let out a laugh of pure relief. The power came back on, the lights and appliances buzzing. To life. She took one last look at her reflection. It mimicked her actions accurately, just as it should. But the frightful experience had taken a toll on her. She couldn't shake the feeling of those lifeless, grinning eyes watching her. Her house felt different, tainted. It was a chilling reminder of the horror that had unfolded the previous night. With newfound resolve, Anna decided to face her fears. She found comfort in company and invited friends over, avoiding being alone in the house as much as possible. Slowly but surely, the traumatic experience became a memory, albeit a deeply etched one. Yet, every now and then, in the quiet of the night, when she passed by a mirror, she couldn't help but pause. She would look into her own eyes and give herself a reassuring 12-year-old Ethan had always been a creative, imaginative boy, spending countless hours reading books and weaving his own tales. Left home alone one Saturday evening, he was thrilled for the solitude and the opportunity to delve into a new fantasy novel. However, his night of peace was soon to be disrupted. Just as he started reading, he heard a muffled sound, a distant conversation seemingly coming from within the house. Frowning, he put down his book, trying to locate the source of the noise. It seemed to be emanating from the walls. Ethan found this odd, but curiosity soon replaced his initial unease. He pressed his ear against the cold plaster wall, straining to listen. To his surprise, he recognized the voices. It was his parents and his older sister talking amongst themselves. This made no sense. His family was out of town for the weekend. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine. He considered calling his parents, but decided to listen further. They were discussing ordinary things at first: groceries needed, repairs around the house, an upcoming family trip. But then the conversation took an eerie turn. They were talking about him, about things he had yet to do. His father's voice echoed, "I can't believe Ethan won the state-level writing competition. His creativity is commendable." Ethan's heart thumped in his chest. He'd just submitted his story to that competition. The results wouldn't be announced for weeks. He listened more, the voices discussing his future accomplishments, his college acceptance into a prestigious writing program, even his successful debut novel. They were speaking with such certainty that it left Ethan both amazed and terrified. He pulled away from the wall, rubbing his eyes in disbelief. Determined to unravel this mystery, Ethan decided to test the walls. He pondered his plans, things he wanted to achieve, and then listened. Each time, the voices would discuss his thoughts, his decisions, just as if they were established facts. Fear gave way to excitement as days passed. Ethan started using the walls to his advantage, plotting his actions and listening for the outcome. It was like having a secret mentor, a guide from an inexplicable source. However, one evening, the discussions behind the wall took a darker turn. His parents' voices were filled with sorrow as they spoke of an accident, a reckless driver, and a lone casualty, Ethan. They were discussing his death. Ethan pulled back, his heart pounding. It felt like a cruel joke, a terrible dream. He didn't know how to react. Fear gripped him, making his hands shake and his breath come in short gasps. Determined to change his fate, Ethan made a drastic decision. He wouldn't leave the house, wouldn't go near any roads. He would stay indoors, safe from any reckless drivers. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan became a prisoner in his own home, living in fear. His parents were worried, but attributed his behavior to stress or teenage angst. Ethan couldn't tell them the truth, fearing they'd never believe him. Finally, after a month of self-imposed house arrest, Ethan decided to face his fears. It was his sister's graduation day, an occasion too important to miss. He decided to risk it. As Ethan and his parents were about to step out of the house, his cell phone rang. It was the state-level writing competition committee. Ethan had won. The joy and surprise on his parents' faces were priceless. But then, the memory of the wall's prediction hit him. This was the same day they'd foretold his death. Panic welled up in him, his heart pounding loudly in his ears. He insisted they stay back and celebrate instead of going out. His parents, seeing his genuine fear, decided to stay back for him. That night, on the news, they learned of a fatal accident on the very road they would have taken to the graduation ceremony. A reckless driver had caused a horrific collision. Ethan stared at the screen, a chill running down his spine. The whispering walls had predicted it all. From that day forward, Ethan lived with a strange mix of dread and gratitude. The whispering walls were a mystery he could never unravel, a chilling voice that knew his future. He was living under the shadow of uncertainty, forever reminded of the thin line between his life and the unknown. For 18-year-old Lily, her family's old Victorian house had always been an edifice of mystery and mild fear. When her parents had to leave town due to an emergency, she found herself alone in the cavernous home during one of the city's worst storms. The thrum of rain on the roof was a steady rhythm in the background as she curled up on the couch, book in hand. An abrupt, unfamiliar noise from the attic disrupted her reading. It was a dull thud, a sound that was certainly out of place. A sudden spike of fear shot through her, but she brushed it off as the house settling. However, when the noise repeated, curiosity overpowered her fear. Taking a deep breath, Lily climbed the creaky stairs, flashlight in hand. The attic was a vast, dim space, filled with old furniture and countless boxes. The beam of her flashlight danced over dusty surfaces as she looked around, trying to find the source of the noise. Hidden behind a cluster of old trunks, she discovered a narrow door she had never noticed before. It was just a bit taller than she was and seemed to blend perfectly into the wooden wall. She turned the brass knob, surprised to find it unlocked. Stepping inside, she found herself in a small, oddly clean room, a stark contrast to the rest of the dusty attic. A series of monitors lined one wall, glowing faintly in the darkened room. It was a chilling sight. The screens displayed live footage from around the house. One screen caught her eye. It was showing the attic and the small room. She could see herself on the monitor, her face pale in the cold light. A chill of fear ran down her spine. Who had set this up, and why? The implications were terrifying. She reached for her phone, planning to call the police, but found that the storm had disrupted the signal. Feeling more vulnerable than ever, Lily decided to search the house. She had to ensure she was truly alone. Room by room, she checked, her heart pounding in her chest. All the while, the eerie knowledge of being watched lingered in the back of her mind. Finally, after ensuring she was alone, Lily returned to the attic room. She decided to shut down the surveillance system, not wanting to be watched any longer. But as she reached for the power button, one of the screens flickered. It was the camera set in the living room, and on it, she saw a shadowy figure. Horror gripped her as she realized someone was in the house. She was not alone. The figure moved with a slow, deliberate pace, like a predator stalking its prey. Panic set in, but she knew she had to be smart. Using the monitors, she kept tabs on the intruder's location. She saw it ascend the stairs, its form growing more distinct. It wasn't a man, but a shadowy entity, a phantom caught on tape. Lily felt an icy wave of terror, but she also realized she had an advantage. She ran to her room, barricaded the door with furniture, and watched the entity's progress on her laptop, having tapped into the surveillance feed. It was searching for her, room by room, its movements echoing throughout the house. Hours passed. Lily watched as the entity moved aimlessly. She was trapped, but safe, the screens providing her a strange form of protection. As dawn broke, the entity disappeared, melting away with the shadows of the night. Exhausted, she finally fell into a fitful sleep. The following morning, she woke to her parents' return. She showed them the attic room and the footage of the entity. They stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the terrifying ordeal their daughter had experienced. In the following days, a team of paranormal investigators were called in. They concluded that the entity was drawn to the house by the storm, but could not determine who set up the surveillance system. In a twist of fate, the unknown observer had inadvertently saved Lily. The incident left a chilling mark on Lily's life, turning her safe haven into a house of horrors. The attic room remained, a grim reminder of the night she was both the watcher and the watched. Her home was now tainted with an eerie mystery, forever haunted by the echoes in the attic. As the clock ticks towards dawn, this is Midnight Callers signing off, reminding you, when darkness falls, the stories rise. Sleep tight, if you dare.